All right. So Brandon, like I said, he's a retired New York police detective, and he's been in Magnolia Bluff now about a year. He moved down last year. In the first book, and anyone that's read Second Chances knows, how he came through some issues that led him to move out of New York and down into Magnolia Bluff, where he ended up, and kind of what transpired while he was there last year. I'm not going to give that away in case somebody hasn't read that and they would like to go back and read it. It's not necessary to read Second Chances in order to enjoy Catch a Tiger by the Toe, but it would certainly enhance it. Let's put it like that. And the way this starts out is Brandon and Joyce, the real estate agent, and her son Jason have become, for lack of a better term, kind of like a family unit. They're really dating, but they're a little bit more serious than dating. And of course, Jason, being Joyce's son, is a part of that overall relationship as well. So that's kind of where I'm going to start with chapter one, because this is a chapter that everyone will be able to read in the look inside part on Amazon, and it's going to be in the back of April's book. So that's where I'm going to go, so you can get an idea where we're at. So again, this is Catch a Tiger by the Toe, chapter one. Brandon Turner pulled his truck into the Magnolia Bluff High School parking lot. It was important that he made it there by 4 o'clock. This was the last baseball game of the school year, and he'd made a promise to Jason, so he wasn't about to let him down. Joyce was showing a client a home on the other side of Burnett Reservoir and wouldn't be able to make the game. Turner felt it was important that he was there to support her son, so he told them both he would be in the stands cheering for the team. It was a beautiful afternoon for a baseball game. It was hot, but it was always hot. Over the last year since he'd migrated south, he'd adapted to the climate of the Texas Hill Country, making the heat slightly more bearable than when he'd first arrived. A small price to pay to be able to live his life without constantly looking over his shoulder, something that had become increasingly difficult right before retiring from the NYPD and moving to Magnolia Bluff. Turner clicked the leash on his 3-year-old Labrador, and the two made their way across the parking lot to the bleachers on the home team's side of the diamond. They climbed up to the first row and took a seat on the wooden bench. Max barked, which caught the attention of Jason, who was warming up on the sideline. "Looking good," said Turner as the boy jogged over to where they were seated. "I really like the new uniforms. The blue Bulldogs logo on the white jersey is sharp." "Yeah, I like it too," replied Jason. He leaned over the railing and gave Max a pat on the head. "The white top with the blue pants looks a lot better than the all blue look we had last year." His lips stretched wide into a grin. "The girls like it better too." Turner nodded knowingly and smiled. "Just keep in mind what I told you," he said. "Make sure I remember to plant my foot when throwing to first." "Exactly. You'll generate more power, and your throw will almost always beat the runner, no matter how fast he is." Jason grinned. "Unless I bobble the ball." Turner laughed. "Just have a great game," he said, shaking his head. "Thanks, I will." Jason turned as the coach called out to him. "Well, I better get over there. Coach wants to have a huddle before we hit the field." He's a good kid, thought Turner as he watched Jason join his teammates so they could listen to the coach's pregame pump up. Ever since he started dating Joyce, Jason had become an important part of his life. They shared an interest in sports, especially baseball. Turner had been the starting second baseman back in his high school days, just like Jason was now on his high school team. He wanted to be respectful of Denny, Jason's dad, but since his father lived in Austin, Turner had stepped into more of the day-to-day role of helping Joyce raise her son. At 16 years old, the kid could be a handful at times, but they'd managed to find a middle ground they all could live with, allowing Turner to function as a mentor for the boy over the last year. He loved helping Jason work on improving his baseball skills, and he knew Jason appreciated it as well. The boy was a natural athlete and already a good second baseman. Turner liked to believe that the drills they worked on over the weekends helped him to become an even better overall ball player. Everyone stood as Miss Caroline McCluskey sang the national anthem, as she did for every home game. When she was through, the umpire yelled, "Play ball!" and the game was underway. It was a pitcher's duel right up through the bottom of the fifth inning. That changed with the first pitch in the top of the sixth when the visiting team's third baseman connected with a fastball and drove it over the left field fence. The Bulldogs answered in the bottom of the seventh when Jason scorched a 3-run homer that bounced off the scoreboard high above center field, putting them up 3-1. The home team held on to the ninth to win the ball when a ball was hit to the shortstop, who flipped it over to Jason, who stepped on the bag, planted his foot, and fired to first, completing the double play to end the game. Turner and Max excitedly jumped up along with the rest of the crowd while the Bulldogs whooped and high-fived each other as they ran off the field in victory. The kids were busily packing up their bats, gloves, and other assorted equipment. Turner and Max waited over by the backstop while Jason finished gathering his gear and stuffed it inside his bag. Several of the other players were still laughing and enjoying the win, while their parents waited and chatted about work and life. Turner watched as a woman pushing one of those small umbrella-style strollers came marching across the playing field from the visitor's side of the diamond. She was frantically whipping her head from side to side and crying hysterically. She stopped right in the center of the pitcher's mound and began screaming, "Has anyone seen my baby? Has anyone seen my baby?" A crowd formed around her as other parents came running over to see what was wrong. The scene quickly became chaotic, and everyone spread out and combed the immediate area for the woman's missing child. Turner fished his phone from a back pocket of his jeans and dialed 911 as he rushed over to where she was standing. Once he'd reported what was happening, he clicked off his device and tried to calm the woman down. "Ma'am, my name is Brandon Turner. I'm a former police detective. I want you to take a couple of deep breaths and exhale slowly. The police are on their way." The woman was shaking but did as he asked. She continued to breathe in and out, and after a minute, she began to settle down a bit. "Good, good," he said in a soothing voice. "What's your name?" "My baby is missing," she said as her voice crumbled and she started crying again. Turner reached out and took her hands in his and looked her in the eyes. "What's your baby's name?" "Emily. My baby's name is Emily," she said between sobs. "Good," said Turner. "How old is Emily?" She's only 2 years old. I have to find her. Please help me find her. The police will be here any second. Can you tell me what happened?" "It's my fault," she said. "I was arguing with my husband, my ex-husband. Emily must have wandered off while I was on the phone." Her chest heaved up and down, and she screamed. "I wasn't paying attention. Oh, God, I was too busy bitching at Jerry, and I wasn't watching Emily." Turner tried to keep his voice even and calm as he spoke. "Was your daughter sitting in the stroller?" Her chest heaved again as she sucked in air and tried to fight back her tears. "Yes, Emily must have climbed out." She shook her head, clutched her stomach, leaned over, and threw up. She used the back of her hand to wipe her mouth and looked up at Turner. "How could I not notice she was gone? What kind of mother does that?" Sirens blared and lights flashed as a white and green trimmed four-wheel drive police SUV, followed by an unmarked cruiser, drove through the parted crowd and up onto the field. Chief Tommy Jaeger climbed out of the vehicle, fastened his hat securely on his head, and walked over to where Turner and the woman were standing. Right behind him, Detective Reese Sovereign emerged from the cruiser and joined the chief. Turner pulled them aside and filled them in on what was going on. "She appears to be a single mother who was on the phone with her ex when her 2-year-old child disappeared. She might have wandered away and is lost. It might be something worse. Either way, the kid, whose name is Emily, is missing." "Thank you for the update," Sovereign said, stepping around Turner so he could see the woman. "We'll take it from here." Turner looked over at the chief. "Tommy, the mother is hysterical and blaming herself. Her child is missing. I think you should talk to her before letting your detective loose on her." Detective Sovereign turned back toward him and scowled. "What the hell is that supposed to mean, Turner?" "I just meant that she doesn't need to be interrogated right now. You have to call in more officers and comb the area for the child. You can pepper her with your questions later." Tommy pulled the microphone from his shoulder and radioed for Winkler and Vandigan to get out to the high school pronto. Sovereign was working on the remnants of a soggy cigar. He pulled it from between his lips, turned his head, and spit. Then he returned the stogie to its resting place in the corner of his mouth. "You said she was talking to her ex on the phone when she noticed the child was gone. Do you believe her? She might think he took the kid and for some reason is covering for him." Turner looked at the detective and then at Tommy. The chief understood and nodded, then glanced over at Sovereign. "There'll be plenty of time for speculation, Reese," he said. "I've got Hans and Nick on the way. Meanwhile, let's spread out and find this woman's child." Turner brought the chief over to the woman and introduced him. She told him her name was Dawn Harding. He also found out that Emily had light brown hair and was wearing pink shorts and a white top with a hummingbird on the front with the words "sweet as nectar" underneath the bird graphic. Sovereign was already leading a group of parents toward the outfield when officers Nick Vandigan and Hans Winkler arrived. The chief and Turner quickly briefed them. Then they rounded up the parents who were still there and began walking the entire school grounds in a grid pattern. Turner told Jason to throw all his gear in the back of his truck and then join him and Max. He had his dog sniff all around the seat of the stroller, and then they headed off to join the search party. After about 20 minutes, Max dragged Turner and Jason over to the far corner of the parking lot where the buses were lined up for the evening. He noticed that the door on the bus at the end farthest from the school building was wide open. Max pulled on the leash hard enough that he had to let go. The dog bolted for the open door with Jason running right behind him. Turner called out after the boy, "Jason, do not go inside that bus without me." Max ran up the steps and entered the school bus. Turner broke into a full sprint when he saw Jason follow the dog through the door. He stepped onto the bus and walked to the back where Max and Jason were standing. As he got closer, he could see Max licking the little girl, and bile rose from his stomach up into his throat. Jason turned to him and said, "She looks so peaceful cuddled up with her stuffed animal, like she's sleeping." Turner knew better. "Please go find Chief Jaeger and bring him back here." Jason nodded and went to find the chief. Turner stared down at the little girl and sighed. She looked so innocent. He would have believed she was sleeping if it wasn't for the note pinned through the hummingbird graphic on her shirt. He pulled out his phone and took a picture of the note. Then he dialed Sovereign's number. "I found the girl," he said when the detective answered. "You can send all the parents home and tell Winkler and Vandigan they can head back to the station, then come around to where the buses are all lined up. I sent Jason to go find Tommy." Turner and Max sat on the school bus near Emily until Sovereign, Tommy, Jason, and the girl's mother arrived. He glanced up at Jason. "I need you to wait outside for now." The boy's face scrunched into a frown. "But I already saw her. I helped find her." "I know you did, and we'll talk later, but for now I need you to wait outside." He reached over and handed him the leash. "Here, take Max with you." Jason let out a sigh and reluctantly took the leash. "Come on, Max," he said, pulling the dog down the aisle with him as he left. Chief Jaeger and Sovereign walked the mother over to where her daughter was lying. "I know this will be hard for you, Dawn," Tommy said gently. "Is this Emily?" She nodded. Her knees buckled, and she fell forward into Tommy's arms. "My baby," she whispered as tears flowed down her cheeks. "My baby." She buried her head into Tommy's shoulder and wept. Turner watched Tommy interact with the woman. The chief's bedside manner surprised him. He didn't peg Tommy as a guy with much empathy, but he wrapped her up in his arms and let her cry for as long as it took for her to get it all out. Once she quieted down and the shivering subsided, he pulled back from her. Turner could tell from his expression that the chief was ready to get down to business and ask a few questions. Tommy found her eyes. "Dawn, do you recognize the handwriting on the note?" She took in a deep breath and looked down at her little girl. The tears started to flow again. "Take your time," he said. Turner looked over her shoulder and read the note again. "Eeny, meeny, miny, mo." He tilted his head and wondered what the significance of a children's nursery rhyme could be. Dawn sniffled, closed her eyes, and took a deep breath. She opened them as she exhaled and took another look at the note. She slowly shook her head. I have no idea what it means." She turned and stared directly at Turner. "Why would someone pin this on Emily's shirt? It makes no sense." "I'm not sure why," he said, trying to console her, "but the police will find out." He smiled gingerly at her. At least Emily still had her stuffed toy to comfort her when she passed. The woman looked up, her eyes darting between the three men. "That's the thing," she said. "That doesn't belong to Emily. I've never seen that stuffed tiger before in my life." And
Wow.
so it was long.